Let's do a little bit of extinction, another popular subject in this site. And we're going to start with the Torus. We're going to start with a Stanford Torus. This was an idea concocted in 1975 originally, and they designed this thing that people can live in. Looks like that, like a Torus, okay? Donut, because that's the best description you can give it, analogy. And it looks like that. So inside it, it looks it's got this river, water there. It's got living space. It's got highways. It's got airplanes going in there. You know, the whole works. It's supposedly like here on Earth, except that it's round and it turns. Right. It's about 1.8 kilometers in diameter and about 5.6 kilometers all around, which is about 3.5 miles. Okay. And supposedly it holds 10,000 people. It can house 10,000 people. And it would do farming in about, I think it was, if I read it correctly a while back, since I've read that, about a third of the Torus is living space. Another third is agriculture, land, etc. And I can't remember what the other part was. I guess cattle or whatever. And so the issue is, living in space. Will we build such a monster? It weighs like 10 tons also. Will we build such a monster and live in space ever? Is this the way to avoid extinction or going into space? And you probably heard of the idea, but let me just mention it. One possibility here that comes to mind is that, you can travel intergenerationally on one of these things, supposedly, right? Or that's the idea, that's the proposal, the theory. You can travel on one of these things. You send 10,000 people on one of these Tauruses, right, donuts, and you send them to another star system, right? You send them to Alpha Centauri after verifying that there is a planet where we can live, right? Maybe third rock from the sun over there, or from Alpha Centauri or Beta Centauri or whichever. And so we already scouted it. We already know about it. We sent our robots there. They looked at it, or maybe they even terraformed this land. Fine, great. Now it's humans' turn to go there, okay? And it's 4.3 light years one way. That means if we could travel at the speed of light, it would take us 4.3 years to get there one way. Not to mention that we can't travel at that speed, so we'd probably go a lot slower. Maybe the best we can imagine today, technology today is 10% of that. And that's, again, with far-fetched technology. And so we would get there in, assuming, in maybe 40 years, 40 plus years, maybe between 40 and 50 years, assuming we could travel at that speed, right? And so the question is, how do we get there? Well, one way is with this intergenerational thing where we send a Torus, people are born, people die, right? New generations come up, and they're born, they die, and new generations come up, and so on down the line. And 50 years down the road, we finally reach destination. Not us, not the people who left, but their grandsons or great-grandsons, okay? That's maybe the best notion you can imagine. What is the problem with that? Well, one problem you got to consider is that the farther you go from the sun, the less the sun powers your little ship there. So think about that, the farther you get, the less energy you get from the sun. Same thing happens also with, for those of you who are familiar with it, the light sail. Okay, you got this little ship which is about 1 kilogram with a sail the size of Turkey, the country of Turkey, and the sun can push it at approximately 1/10 of the speed of light. Okay, which would be about 30,000 kilometers per second. But that's here in the neighborhood. The farther it goes outside of the solar system, well, that solar wind can't push that sail at the same speed that it was here in the solar system, within the solar system. And, for that, you got to look at my video there. It's known as the Pioneer Anomaly. I analyzed that. It gives you an idea that, we'll never get out of the solar system. And life cannot travel interstellarly, not at distances such as 4 light years away. Now, you have Alpha, Beta, and Proxima Centauri. They're in the same neighborhood. It's a 3-star system. Well, maybe they're close enough to each other where if there is life, they could conceivably go to another planet within that 3-star system. But us here, we're so isolated from everything. No, there's no way life can come here or life can go here. So all these people who talk about panspermia, they have no clue what they're talking about. It never happened. Not here on Earth. Maybe some other planet where we have close enough stars, binary stars or triple stars like Alpha Centauri. Otherwise, no, it can't happen. We can't have panspermia. We can't have living things come here and visit us. It's impossible, physically impossible. And for that, you got to look at the Pioneer anomaly. That's where I've got that argument. Anyways, will we travel ever to another star? I say we won't. And if that's correct, if that's a good assessment, what the hell are we spending all this money in research for colonization? And I want to clarify, I have no problem with understanding that governments would like to have research done for military purposes. Okay, that I can understand. What I can't understand is that they would give money for colonization. Okay, for people going out there and populating Mars or the moon or some other stone. Can that ever happen? And if it can't happen, what the hell are we spending the money for? Tourism I can also understand. We have Elon Musk. He's spending his money maybe to carry people around for a week, rich people who can pay to go out there for 1 week around, the Earth, a little bit in outer space. Great adventure, no problem there either. But colonization, that's something else. Are we going to evacuate the Earth, send everybody to Mars, smaller planet, a fourth the size of the Earth approximately? Are we going to terraform Mars? Are we going to do all that effort for what? We have enough space here on Earth at this point. We got a long ways to go, and if extinction has its way, well, we'll never make it beyond the Earth. So what's all this money being spent for? And it turns out they did all kinds of studies on whether humans can live in space, because again, people are thinking of colonization. And there was a project started in the around 1975, I think, also, but it was finally completed by around 1991. And it turns out I went there. It was near Tucson, Arizona, a little north of Tucson, and it's known as Biosphere 2. And these are the people, the 8 people, 4 women and 4 men who lived in there for about, I think, 3.5 years. And I went there almost shortly after it was open. And I saw them, doing what you see there. They're they're tending the cattle, the chickens, and whatever they've got in there, and they were also working in the garden and so on. And the idea was to be self-sustainable, okay? Produce their own food. It's hermetically sealed. You got to go in there through locked doors, special kinds of doors that will not allow any atmosphere to leave or any atmosphere to come in. And they lived there for quite a while, and they did all kinds of experiments, especially trying to figure out if they could live there. In other words, they decided to go to prison voluntarily for 3.5 years, and again to learn whether humans can live in an environment, for example, in outer space, for example, in the Torus, right, in the Stanford Torus, if they could live there. And there were all kinds of problems. Among them, apparently there was more CO2 being kept in there than O2. I guess the plants were not absorbing all the CO2 they were supposed to. And so that was one problem. Another problem was psychological. I guess they started getting into a few arguments. After a while, it was like marriage. They couldn't stand each other. So they had quite a few problems, and it was at least a good study in that sense. Okay? And the question is, humans like to go to all these extremes and test them out, research, find out if we could, live in such an environment, for example, live in outer space. One of the things that they're considering, some of the factors that they're considering for when humans go to Mars, assuming we get there, right, is that, it's a long trip. You're talking about maybe 2 years. And one of the issues is, what happens if you get a appendix problem? You need an operation. So one of the suggestions was that all these people had to have an appendix operation before they leave Earth, okay? Things of that nature. The other one was, psychological. Can they stand each other? Will one guy go nuts up there, after 2 years and start killing people or whatever, So there's several issues that they have to consider before sending humans to Mars. Okay, and so this is a good way of testing a lot of that stuff. Find out, what kind of problems they run into. Okay, and so so those are some of the things you got to ponder if you're a a Star Trek buff. Will we go to Mars? Will we go with a Torus? Will we ever build a Torus? Can we live in a Torus? What kind of problems can we encounter with living in you could say in a prison? In a way, it's a prison, right? And you do have, the Skylab up there. You have this lab that's orbiting the Earth, and astronauts take turns, and they live quite a while, several months up there. There's the gravitational issue. They lose bone mass, etc. Physical things. But there's also the issue of mental. These people might go nuts up there, and so they test all these things. They really select their people and train them, hypnotize them or whatever to make sure they can withstand that entire environment. It's not so easy to say, "Oh, I'll just go into space. How nice," Well, there's a little more than nice. It's even worse than going to prison. You get stuck in a little room, and that's it. You're like in solitary up there. Okay, some of these people, later on, the people who went into Biosphere 2, they took a trip around the world in their little ship known as the Heraclitus. And again, they do research to find out, what kind of environmental problems there are. They meet different cultures. They look at certain things, and they make reports on what they find. They also learned a lot of shipmanship, okay, how to run a ship and how to fix it and all the types of problems they run into. And again, the notion behind this is this notion of spaceship Earth, of being able to live out there in space like we live on Earth. Is that the future of humanity? Will we have a bunch of Tauruses orbiting the Earth or whatever planet, and or the sun, and people living in there? 10,000 people in one Taurus, 10,000 in another. Hey, I got to visit my grandma, so I'll just take the next flight to the next Taurus. Right? Is that how we're going to live? Jetson society, so to speak. I don't know. It was conceived in 1975. We haven't built a single screw yet for or bolt, for such an undertaking. It's just an idea, fancy idea. It's on paper. It's not out there. Will it ever be built? I don't know. But here we have an organization that started around the same time. It was initially started by Werner von Braun, who was the guy who ran the rockets for the United States after he was enticed to go from Germany to the United States. Okay, he ran the rocket program. And they created this, what is called today, National Space Society. And this is what they believe in. They say, we believe that space development and settlement will occur most efficiently, and humanity's prosperity will be best ensured if. And here they have the main points that they have in their goals. Okay, and it's every human being is given the freedom of thought and action. Every human being is allowed the opportunity to travel, live, and or work in outer space. Every human being is allowed the opportunity to own property in space or in other worlds. Great. The free market drivers of competition and profit are used. Okay, so capitalism, rampant capitalism, sounds like it was written by one of these narco-caps, okay, a narco-capitalist. That's what this all looks like, okay. National governments fund the research and development of space technologies deemed too high risk by their industries. Nations cooperate on space research and development and leave competition to individual companies. The fundamentals of democracy are applied to and incorporated by space settlements. And one of the goals and benefits of space development and settlement is to restore and enhance the biosphere of the planet Earth. Okay, so again, you can see we have that biosphere, that Torus out there. That's the idea behind all this. And space development and settlement is pursued in a manner that safeguards alien life forms. We have to respect the aliens, right? Natural wonders and historical monuments. Will any of this ever happen? Is this just dreamers? People who have dreams and their dreams take them, a foot off the ground. They're floating in air. Is this real? Is this ever going to happen? Well, I'll tell you how I got into this subject of extinction. And, I used to believe also at one time without analyzing. I just believed in it without any reason to believe that, humans were going to conquer the planets. I thought it was a logical conclusion there, Yeah, people will terraform like Mars and so on, and from there jump to another star system eventually, and from there conquer the entire galaxy and then maybe several galaxies. That's the way I looked at it. And I never gave it any thought. I just believed in it without any reason. It just seemed logical to me, you know. And then I started getting into the subject of extinction really through relativity. Because the relativists, you know, all these bozos out there, they believe that humans are going to live forever. And why? Because they believe too much in technology. And they think anything is possible. And they make all those impossibilities work through four-dimensional things or wormholes or black holes. You know, they introduce all this magic in there and they say, oh yeah, then anything is possible. I could just go through a wormhole, get to the other side of the universe in 2 seconds, and this is the way these people think. And so I started looking at that and say, hold everything. Look, you know, I thought this was just going to another star system, and yeah, I thought it was possible, but then when I looked at the numbers, the possibilities and so on, when I did a more serious analysis, I rejected it right offhand, and I wrote about that in my book, in fact. But today, well, I laugh at this. There's absolutely no possibility whatsoever physically, first of all. And second, we're about to become extinct. So, you know, I don't know what these people have going through their bean brains. It's never going to happen. But this is what people believe, and a lot of people believe this out there simply because it's been, you know, shoved down their throat by authority. They believe it on the basis of authority because the mathematicians told them so. And no one really stopped to think in any detail. A lot of people haven't, most people out there haven't stopped to think whether this is even feasible. You know, they take it for granted that humans can do anything they want. And this is the way they think. And that's incredible. And yeah, so what can I say? Anyways, moving on here, one person asked a question or made a comment. He says, hey, Bill, would it be possible for you to comment on Jay Hanson's Overshoot loop hypothesis in your amicable style? Here is the link to the website, etc. Okay. Now, you know, I did cover Jay Hanson a while back. I learned the other day that he died. He had an accident, a diving accident of some kind. And yeah, I wrote about him. Anyways, here it is. Here's the page where I wrote about him in youstupidrelativist.com for those of you who are aware of the site. And you can look it up there. I put the link there, okay, so you can copy it and just go there if you're interested in finding out what I said about good old Jay. And one of the articles that came out of that site that he created, which is known as Die-Off, okay, if you look for Die-Off, you'll find that's Hanson's site. And in Die-Off, the article that most impacted me, which I loved a lot, and I recommend everyone should read it, it's this one, okay? It's a site. It's an article by David Klein and Keelan. I'm sorry, Klein? No, Klein. And it's about reindeers that were introduced into St. Matthew's Island, up north near Canada, and an island out there near Alaska. That region. And after several years of monitoring these reindeer on and off, it wasn't like very scientific. It was just they went to the island every now and then, every couple years or whatever, and they looked at the reindeer and they found a lot of reindeer. At one point they did a population count of reindeer, and it had reached up to 6,000. And then the next time they went there, there were like 20 left. There was only one male and like 19 females, and they were all pretty much sick and ready to die. I think they managed to save them. But it's a great study in what is known as density-dependent birth rates. Density dependence. You should learn a little bit about that. And one way to learn is through that article. I strongly recommend that you read it, What Happened to the Reindeer. That was an actual case. Anyways, that was the article that I liked the most of the ones I saw at Die-Off by Hanson, Hanson's site. And this is what good old Hanson had to say. Okay, essentially this is his philosophy regarding what this fellow mentioned, you know, the overshoot, and it's got to do with energy. Okay, and that's why, you know, I frowned upon a lot on Jay Hanson because he tries to mathematize something that has no reason to be mathematized. He says energy is a key aspect of overshoot because available energy is always limited by the energy required to utilize it. Organisms are required by the second law of thermodynamics to dissipate energy. Power is energy dissipation for a purpose and equals force times flow, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Organisms evolved a bias to maximize fitness by maximizing power. With greater power, there's greater opportunity to allocate energy to reproduction and survival, and therefore an organism that captures and utilizes more energy than another organism in a population will have a fitness advantage. Well, when people talk about energy and fitness advantage and talk about opportunity to allocate this energy and talk about reproduction and survival, I know they have no clue whatsoever. Okay, and so I have very little respect to people that bring up those subjects in the context of extinction. And they say, well, the inevitable overshoot eventually leads to decreasing power attainable for the group, with lower ranking members suffering first. And what he goes through it here is the New World Order kind of thing, like saying the rich will try to dominate the poor. Essentially, that's his argument. So all these people, like Hanson, they talk about peak oil. They talk about energy, which has nothing to do with anything. They talk about the rich and powerful, how they're going to conquer the world and enslave all the poor people, that sort of thing. And that already turns me off. So let me just synthesize here. Okay, here it is. Okay, this is what these people are. They're environmentalists and conservationists, and which are all my intellectual enemies. Okay. These people have no clue whatsoever. Anyone who's an environmentalist, a conservationist, has no clue whatsoever. Why? Because they go off on tangents. And the tangents are, they talk about climate change, pollution, overpopulation, endangered species, crowding out of the animals, we're crowding them out, poaching, entertainment, the fact that we use animals in zoos and circuses, that we're slashing and burning the forests and the jungles, we're overforesting, and peak oil and energy. So the issue here is that they go off on all these tangents and some others that maybe I haven't even mentioned. And I had a discussion with Guy McPherson, and again, he believes it's going to be an environmental catastrophe. He gave the date of 2026 as the last year for humans. He says that's when extinction is going to hit us. We may not disagree on the date. I think it's coming soon. I can't say 2026, can't say 2030, 2022. I can't say any of that because I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. He put a date, but his reasoning, the reason he thinks humans are going to become extinct is for one of these issues, primarily climate change and the fact that we are abusing our environment. We're too many people on the planet, that sort of thing. Okay, and none of those have to do anything with the extinction of man. Okay, in my humble opinion, my theory, okay? My theory says something different, just so that people are aware that I'm not an environmentalist or a conservationist, okay? And here's comparison side by side, okay? There's this evil bill, okay? This is what I have against these people. They take the discussion along irrelevant tangents. None of the issues that you see on the left and others, right? They raise cause extinction. Okay? None of them. Extinction has nothing to do with climate change, with overpopulation, with endangered species, none of that. Mass extinction is a food collapse, and I have a definition for that. Mass extinction, the disappearance of a food chain. That's what a mass extinction is. One food chain goes away, another one continues on as if nothing. Background extinction is the extinction of a single species, and it's caused by what? The overturning of the population pyramid. Okay? The mass extinction is the overturning of the ecological pyramid, in contrast. Neanderthal, woolly, these animals that we tracked, they died in a background extinction. They died all alone. They died when their population pyramid overturned, and they lost genetic diversity. Both whammies at the same time. Man, we will not die in a background extinction. We will be the last of the hominins, whichever one you want to call, and we will die in a mass extinction together with all the rest of the mammals that are alive today. Okay, so just so you know that we don't agree with some of these people. Okay, let me get myself back in here, if I can find myself. Give me a second. Okay, here we go. No, we haven't gone yet. There I am. I'm back. Okay, so some people raise some issues along extinction. Let me answer those questions or those comments. One person says here, again, I think quite ignorant, it says, eventually people will begin to flourish. You're acting like everyone is just going to be violent. Okay? We're all going to be violent, just kill each other. A small community of people can easily begin to grow lots of food. Okay? And seriously, life will go on. Few chicks, few dudes, more people in 9 months. Poor fella. I really feel sorry for people who have no clue whatsoever in this case, because these guys will be the most surprised when the global economy collapses and they'll find out that their friends are not their friends. Okay, so this is what the world population growth rates look like. We're heading down to zero population growth sometime this century, and together with that we have loss of genetic diversity. So even if a pocket of group of people survive, this will not be Adam and Eve. Okay, it will be Adam and Eve after they lost their genetic diversity. So whatever kids they have after that in a small population, which has already lost its genetic diversity, well, all you'll have is six-finger kids, autistic kids, homosexual kids. You'll have all the problems caused by loss of genetic diversity, which is what we have today, more or less. We're seeing just the tip of the iceberg of what's going on out there. Okay? Another fellow says, I like this. He says, even the Amish are armed. Harm one, a whole community comes down on you. This guy's been watching too much TV. Poor fellow. He doesn't know. He doesn't have a clue. I mean, the Amish with guns. This was a comedy that was on TV in 2017, and they were just making fun of the Amish there. And this guy probably saw a few photographs there and said, "Oh, the Amish are armed. Look, these are farmers that are armed." Amish don't touch weapons, no matter how. They don't even touch a telephone. The most dangerous weapon that an Amish or a Mennonite touches is a plow. And they certainly won't use it to defend themselves. They completely unbelievable that people really think that. They don't know. They have no clue. Okay, now this guy has said it right. He said, the guy with the guns and the will to kill beats the guy with the food. Absolutely. This guy hit it on the nose. Yeah, that's the way it's going to be. Those with guns will go over the farms like the locusts, But it turns out that they don't even need to kill you or fight you. Think about it for a second. You go to, the world collapses. There's no more money. There's no more trade because the only thing of value is food, and you don't trade food, period. We're done. He who didn't understand that, well, he's got a mental problem. Okay, now there's no food. So lots of city folk will rush to the country probably, or a lot of them will think about it. They'll go with their cars while they still have gas, okay? And they go to these acres and acres of planted land, assuming, it's near harvest time. Let us hope that when that happens, we're close to harvest time, okay? So they rush to and again, one hemisphere is different than the other hemisphere. One hemisphere will be in winter, the other one in summer, so the guys in summer will probably be better off than the guys in winter. Okay, but assuming you're in the world where it's summer still, right? You go to the farms, it's close to harvest season, and you see all this, the amber waves of grain just spreading out as far as the eye can see, okay? And you see all this grain, all this food, and you're hungry. Now guess what you're going to do? Well, you might take your gun with you, but it's not because you take a gun, you take it maybe just for defense. But meanwhile, you got all these acres of land. You got one farmer in there. Is he going to control, 40 acres of land? How's he going to do it? With an airplane? Is he going to run around with his car? People will just go to the farm and start tearing the corn, whether at night or day. It's not a question of saying, oh, I've got a gun, so I'm going to defend my crops. Well, I want to see you defend, 40 acres of crops or whatever, with your gun against thousands of people who are just hungry. Here you see this kid just eating corn because he's desperate, just starving, and you grab your gun and you're going to shoot him in the head. Yeah. So it's not a question of saying, oh, I'm going to grab my gun and defend my land. No, it's a question of, first, can you defend it against thousands of people who just swarm your farm because they're hungry and they're just going to start eating, or just taking the corn, the wheat, whatever they can find out of the ground and just munching it raw, or grinding it and turning it into flour or whatever. I don't think it's going to be easy to defend against that, assuming you are a cold-blooded murderer who just goes in there and shoots people, and are willing to shoot people to defend your land. And what are you going to do? Go up there and say, no, folks, let's wait 4 months. I'm going to teach you how to grow food. Yeah, we'll wait 4 months until you train us. We plant and we harvest. Yeah, sure. Now, when the shit hits the fan, it's going to be a dog-eat-dog world. It's not going to be Mr. Nice Guy. No way. And that's why all I can tell you is, if you want to address extinction, do Extinction 101 before you do 102. Don't tell me how man is not going to die. Tell me how animals in the past did die, how they became extinct. And hopefully you don't come up with asteroids, volcanoes, and supernovas, or any of the nonsense proposed by paleontology today.